Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. The European Union and South Africa are joining the United Nations call for an independent investigation into the mass graves unearthed in Gaza. Civilian groups identified multiple mass graves with hundreds of bodies outside two hospitals, Al Nasser in Khan Yunis and Al Shifa in northern Gaza. Peter Stano is a spokesperson for the European Union.
We are gravely concerned by the reported discovery of mass graves in Khan Yunis and in Al Shifa hospital. This is something that forces us to call for an independent investigation of all the suspicions and all the circumstances, because indeed it creates the impression that there might have been violations of international human rights committed. That's why it's important to have independent investigation and to ensure the accountability.
South Africa, which has filed genocide claims against Israel's war in Gaza at the International Court of Justice, said in a statement the evidence related to the mass killings committed by Israel against civilians indicates war crimes and genocide. It's calling on the International Criminal Court to open a probe of the mass graves and for the perpetrators to be held to account. The Biden administration says it's looking into the claims. The Israeli military today said it's redeploying 2 reserve brigades from Israel's northern border to Gaza for defensive and tactical missions as it prepares for an offensive in Rafah. Israel describes the southern Gaza city as Hamas's last stronghold. More than half of the territory's population has sought refuge to Rafah. The Biden administration has been publicly critical of a Rafah invasion. Student anti-war activism against Israel's war in Gaza continues across the country, and repression is heating up. Columbia University's threatened to bring in the National Guard to disband a student encampment on campus in New York City, according to the university's chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. Brown University students have established a Gaza solidarity encampment as the student anti-war movement grows across the country. In California, video of students at Cal State Poly Humboldt forced police out of 2 buildings they are occupying to protest the war. There's more than a dozen encampments on campuses across the country. Student protests are building momentum toward a mass protest at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago in August. President Joe Biden says he will sign a $95 billion foreign aid bill that the Senate passed last night. It provides wartime funding for $60 billion for Ukraine, $26 billion for Israel and humanitarian relief for Gaza, and $8 billion for Taiwan. The vote was 79-18. Here's Senate Leader Chuck Schumer.
The Senate sends a unified message to the entire world. America will always defend democracy in its hour of need. We tell our allies, we will stand with you. We tell our adversaries, don't mess with us. We tell the world, we will do everything to defend democracy and our way of life.
Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders was among the few Democrats and more than a dozen Republicans to vote no. Sanders cited Israel's war in Gaza.
And right now, as we speak, hundreds of thousands of children face starvation as a result of that war machine. Poll after poll shows that the American people are sick and tired of seeing their taxpayer dollars support the slaughter of innocent civilians and the starvation of children.
The foreign aid package also includes a measure that could ban the social media app TikTok in the U.S. if its Chinese owners do not sell their stake within a year. European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen spoke forcefully against Russia after the U.S. cleared $60 billion in military aid for Ukraine.
What happens in Ukraine will shape the future of our union forever. We cannot overlook and we cannot overstate that Russia poses an existential threat, not only to Ukraine, but also to Europe. A Putin win would not only change the map, it would not only mask the face of the Ukrainian nation, but it would change the course of European history.
That aid may prevent Ukraine from losing its war in Russia, but winning it will be a slog. Russia's pushing forward along the front lines in its Ukraine war, and Ukraine says it needs artillery ammunition and air defenses to counter the assaults. China blasted the U.S. military assistance to Taiwan in the foreign aid bill, saying funding was pushing the self-governing island into a dangerous situation. China claims the island as its territory territory and has threatened to take it by force if necessary. This comes as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in China to discuss, among other things, its military-industrial sector supporting Russia during its war in Ukraine. Dueling protests are taking shape outside the U.S. Supreme Court as the justices prepare to consider an abortion case, the second this year. It stems from Idaho, which is among 14 states to ban abortion at all stages of pregnancy with limited exceptions. The Biden administration argues federal health care law says hospitals must be allowed to terminate pregnancies in rare emergencies when a patient's life or health is at serious risk. Idaho contends its ban has exceptions for life-saving abortions. I'm Christina Onestad, reporting for Pacifica Radio.